Greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, Robert Meyer Burnett. I invite you to watch and listen to the Designing Hollywood podcast, brought to you by Martika Ibarra and the great, legendary Hollywood costume designer, Marilyn Vance. I am afforded the wonderful opportunity of co-hosting the show. If you are interested in the magic of Hollywood, the design of Hollywood, the clothes of Hollywood, watch the Designing Hollywood podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts from, or find the video version on the John Campea YouTube channel. That's right, the Designing Hollywood podcast. Why would you ever want to miss it? Especially if you love the movies.
Observations with Robert Meyer Burnett.
I've heard it said before, like, it was a very smart man named Robert Meyer Burnett who said the currency of our current age is authenticity. And it's so true.
Imagination Connoisseurs Unlimited, in association with Road to Perdition writer Max Allan Collins, brings you True Noir, the Nathan Heller casebooks, based on Max's 19-novel series about Chicago PD officer turned private eye to the stars, Nathan Heller. The audio drama stars Todd Stashwick. You loved him in Picard Season 3 as Liam Shaw. You hated him and loved him as the Deacon in 12 Monkeys. Hear him the way you've never heard him before in 5.1 and Dolby Atmos. Look for the crowdfunding campaign coming to an internet near you. Greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your evangelist of the imagination, and the perhaps never to be defined existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, me, Robert Meyer Burnett. Now, of course, Rob casting at you, you imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. This is Robservations episode number 941. Well, as you people know, our movie Tango, Shalom, a film that was actually blessed by the Pope, a movie that won the Audience Award at the very first Islamic Comedy Film Festival in Berat, Morocco. Tango Shalom has been retitled. That's right, people hate us Jews, so the movie I toiled away on as a producer and as the editor, post-supervisor, and VFX supervisor has been retitled. It's no longer called Tango Shalom. Our distributors thought we should change the name to Forbidden Tango. Well, it pushes it up in those rankings for SVOD, right? And when you're looking for something streaming, you only have to get to the letter F instead of all the way down to the letter T. So perhaps it makes sense. But just wanted to let you know, if you're looking to see Tango Shalom, you can now find it. Well, you can still find it that way on the IMDb, but you can see the new poster, which I have to admit, they used a frame grab that I made for the poster. So it's kind of cool. Forbidden Tango. It has a second life. Not to be confused with The White Devils. You'll be hearing more about that soon. The next movie I produced, which you will be seeing in, well, the latter half of this year. So I'm very excited to share that with you. So, you know, how about that Dune 2? I got to tell you, I'm still kind of quivering. Still kind of quivering. I can't remember the last time. I think the last time I went and saw a movie, I went and saw a 3 o'clock in the morning screening of Age of Ultron at the Dome. But this Friday, I'm going to see a movie I've already seen. I'm going to see Dune 2 at Universal at 7:10 in the morning. Yes, I will acquire my popcorn bucket. No, I'm not going to bring my Lego ornithopter. I mean, I know many of you wanted to see a picture of me walking into an IMAX screening room or an IMAX theater holding a Lego ornithopter, but I ain't going to do that. People have suggested it, but no, I don't want to have what happened when, Harrison Ford tried to bobble that Lego Millennium Falcon on those late night talk shows, or that one late night talk show. It didn't end well. Besides, I'm not really that much of a geek. But I am seeing Dune 2 a second time. If you needed any more reason to go and you didn't believe how much I loved it, oh, I loved it. It was a spectacle. So anyway, you know me. I'm always looking out at the business of Hollywood. It's something I quite enjoy. I've been following the business of Hollywood since I was a little kid, actually. A friend of mine named Taylor White used to send me trade. He'd clip out things from the trades back in the 80s and mail them to me, things he thought I needed to know. So following the business of Hollywood, and it's never been more fun these days. Now, as you all know, you've heard me tell the stories many, many times. I began my career first as the art department production assistant on Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but then I was hired by Bill Young, the senior vice president of physical production at Warner Brothers, to be one of the first of 3 management trainees. So basically, what we did was we're glorified production assistants, but basically what we did was we made sure that all the information that was coming through our office, in the form of anything, but every day there was production reports and there were call sheets, and we had to distribute them throughout the studio. And the thing about physical production was, in the hierarchy of the studio, we were not on the second floor. We were below, which always, it was a very interesting, weird dynamic. But for me, as a movie fanatic kid right out of film school and then working on my first film at 22, a horror movie, and then being plopped on a studio lot where basically all I did all day long was wander around the studio lot and talk to people. And I think my boyish enthusiasm it got me in pretty much every door. And when you said you worked for feature production, you could go literally anywhere. Anybody would let you, and I didn't really understand at first the studio politics. Like, you couldn't just walk into Bob Daly and Terry Semmel's office and start talking to them, even though I tried. Because I did have to go in and give the assistants all the paperwork every day. So you ended up meeting everybody. And then, of course, it became like Morgan Freeman. I'm the guy that can get you things. And people would ask me to get stuff from this place and that place. It was a pretty interesting place to be. But what was really interesting was you really got to see how did the executives work? What was it like? And there were a lot of times when I was asked to sit in on meetings for various things, like sometimes they would need scripts that would be copied. Of course, I copied everything. I made another copy for myself and took it home, which I thought was gone. Went completely unnoticed. Oh, it was noticed. but it was allowed because I think my youthful exuberance kept me in everyone's good graces because they knew I meant well. But what I also understood was that the people that work at studios were not necessarily fans of movies, which seems counterintuitive, but I understood. Basically, studio executives were like teachers, and they were managing a bunch of crazy grad students, or let's face it, kindergartners, who had big dreams that wanted all the toys to play with, and the studio executives had to say, no. No, you can't do that. So it was, I understood where they were coming from. And I don't know if studio executives could ever really, if they could be fans, I don't know if that would be conducive to their positions. Now, and there's a hierarchy of studio executives. There was like the president of the studio, and the president of the studio controlled everybody. And then underneath the president of the studio, there were senior vice presidents, and then there were creative executives, CEs. And what was interesting was we in physical production had nothing to do with what movies got made. That was way above our pay grade. So what happened was, or my Bill Young's pay grade. So what happened was the heads of the studio would deal with the top tier talent, and then the senior vice presidents would deal with, once the top tier talent, they would try and figure out what are we going to make next, kind of a thing. And the creative executives were the people that were in charge of then reading the material and commenting on it and things like that. So it was an interesting place to be. It's also an interesting dynamic because basically, imagine what it's like when you're a studio executive and you have to see and meet with and read hundreds of projects from very talented people, because at the studio level, you're not usually dealing with independent people. You're dealing with top tier talent. And so even the top tier talent is always coming with their hat in their hand, please, sir, may I have some more, trying to get their projects made. And the studio executives are the people they have to impress. And so it's just a crazy dynamic. And there's no other place, and I don't know, I mean, I've never really worked in any other business. I guess if you're looking for, if you're going to a startup and you go see Peter Thiel, you social network that shit, and you go up there and you go with Sean Parker and you wear a bathrobe to a meeting. Maybe when you meet with with somebody who's going to give you, investment, it's like that. But the studio environment. But here's the thing. You never got the sense that the people that were working at the very highest echelons of the studio loved movies. A few did. But I had a little corner office that was actually behind the coffee maker. It was basically a closet. But I shared it with the other two management trainees, and we had our little desks in there. And on the wall, when I was at Warner Brothers, Columbia Pictures, it was the Burbank Studios, and Columbia Pictures was still on the lot. When I was there, Columbia moved across town where they are now, Sony. But I would have stuff on my wall of things that I was excited about. And this will date me, but like I had a poster for Total Recall. And I used to catch shit for it. They're like, that's not a Warner Brothers movie. And when I did have a Warner Brothers poster, like Wim Wenders' Until the End of the World, I had creative executives, one in particular, a girl named Stacy. She's like, that movie's not going to make any money. And this was on the heels of Wings of Desire. And I'm like, come on, man. It's Wim Wenders. Warner Brothers is releasing this. Why don't they release the 5-hour version? Why do we have to get the cut down version? But they didn't like the idea of being a movie fan somehow discredited your professionalism, which I could understand, because if you allow your exuberance to lead the way, it's like The Godfather. All the lessons you need to know are in The Godfather. Never let anyone outside the family know what you're thinking. If you're enthusiastic about the movies that you're making, especially to the talent that's trying to get money from you or trying to get a green light from you, you lose your power. So you have to maintain an even strain. It's like The Right Stuff. So I get that. I understand all of that. But at the same time, even back then when I was there, and this was 30 plus years ago, but it really hasn't changed that much, The Player, Robert Altman's The Player came out. And The Player, based on a book by Michael Tolkien, if you've seen it, it was a pretty interesting, the portrayal of what went on in the studios was pretty accurate. I mean, there was a satiric bent to it, but it gave you great insight from a certain perspective of what that world is like. But the best, if you want to see what the best version, in my humble opinion, of what it's like, and you've seen things like Swimming with Sharks, and you've seen Saul Rubinek as Joel Silver in True Romance. You've seen that kind of thing, but that's different. If you want to see my favorite depiction of a studio president, bar none, is Catherine Keener in Barry Levinson's What Just Happened. And What Just Happened is an adaptation of Art Linson's book of the same name, where Robert De Niro is playing a producer and has to deal with Catherine Keener. The great Michael Wincott is in it. Bruce Willis is in it. It is, if you've worked in Hollywood, What Just Happened is a cringe fest because it's so true. I love this movie. It's kind of hard to find. I have the Blu-ray, and no, you cannot borrow it. I'm sorry, I'm not going to loan it to you. But you can find it, and it's that and The Bay are like Barry Levinson's unsung lost films. But watch What Just Happened, because if you want some insight into that. Well, anyway, we all wonder today, like, what the hell's going on at the studios, and there's You have people like David Zaslav, who now runs Warner Brothers, who took over from AT&T. So Warner Brothers as a studio, the people that have been running, that are running the studios now are it seems the movies are now sort of secondary. you got to make profits. You got to get the shareholders. You got to keep them happy. And now that these companies are acquired by larger concerns, and other things that have happened in the business is that movies are so expensive now that the studios are no longer financing their own movies themselves. You'll see sometimes many, many logos for different production entities or different financiers at the beginning of movies. When I worked back at Warner Brothers, it was almost unheard of that you would partner up with another company to produce films, but that was when you could make a movie like Hunt for Red October for $30 million. Those days are long gone. The studios are now making even a cheap movie. It's like, it only cost $85 million. I mean, $85 million, as if that's chump change, but it isn't. So anyway, we're looking at things in terms of superhero movies. You've seen Sony releases Madam Web, the MCU, Disney puts out Marvels, and you wonder what the hell's going on. Like what is happening at the studios? Between DEI initiatives and everyone is second guessing things because, like the great William Goldman said, nobody knows anything. And I think that's sort of always been true, but now more so than ever, marketing, analytics, everyone is consulting everything because the cost of movies has made everyone so risk averse that people are only trying to make films that are slam dunks because there's so much money at stake that you can't afford to lose. And one big loss can be the end of a career. Someone like Kevin Feige, who I admittedly used to call our Lord and Savior, I'm a huge fan of his. He came up the ranks. He worked over at Richard Donner's after I was there, but worked over Richard Donner's. I mean, I was there working on Free Willy after I worked at Warner Brothers, but it was still on the lot. But Kevin Feige, lest we forget, he worked on 14 Marvel films before there was an MCU. So when he was working for Avi Arad, he worked on everything from the X-Men, Spider-Man movies, Elektra, Daredevil. He even worked on Man-Thing, but people forget about that. So he worked on 14 Marvel productions before the MCU, before 2008, and Iron Man was made. So he saw what worked, what didn't work. Plus, he's a huge fan and a massive Star Trek fan as well. And I don't think I met him when I was shooting behind the scenes on like X2 and things like that. I might have, but I've never had a conversation with him. But he is probably the first time an executive who lives and breathes and a producer. He was a fan that ascended to power because he combined knowledge of production that he gleaned on the job. 14 Marvel movies before the MCU. No other executive or producer in history has had that much on-the-job training watching those kinds of movies being made. So by the time he got to run the MCU, by the time he made Iron Man, he had 14 Marvel films under his belt as a producer. Almost unheard of. And for a studio executive, for a lot of the studio executives, very few of them actually have on-set movie-going production experience. They haven't produced things. They've worked their way up in the studio system. And one of the reasons that I didn't, the point of my position at Warner Brothers, it was created so we would come up the ranks inside the studio system. And maybe rightly or wrongly, I didn't want to be a studio executive. I didn't have an Ivy League education. I knew that I could only go so far. I wanted to make movies. So I sort of jumped ship and went to Silver and became a reader, but then went into production via makeup effects. I started working for Tony Gardner's studio, and I was sort of helping coordinate things, and it was a lot of fun. And then moved into film editing and lived in the independent world, such as it is. Hence, my little movies now get retitled. But anyway, where does that take us? Well, one of the interesting things that has happened in the last decade is not just that Disney bought Star Wars and Marvel and those things, but that Disney bought 20th Century Fox. My dream in life, in addition to making movies, is still and was and has been my whole life to make a movie with the 20th Century, once 20th Century Fox. Actually, it was 20th Century Studios. Then it was 20th Century Fox. Now it's back to 20th Century Studios. Is to make a movie with the 20th Century logo. It's my favorite logo. A lot of it had to do with Star Wars, of course, and Alien. But I love 20th Century Studios. And, you know, I mean, all the movies that you've seen with the 20th Century logo, the Planet of the Apes movies, Patton, The French Connection, of course, Star Wars, The Omen. I mean, there's so many 20th Century Fox movies that were seminal in my life. I love 20th Century Fox, now 20th Century Studios. So Disney has bought 20th Century Studios, and they've done nothing with it. They've done nothing with it. Now, when I was covering the X-Men movies, when I was doing behind the scenes on Brian's first two X-Men movies, and then also peripherally when he would, you know, I'd keep bring me to the studio to watch cuts of Days of Future Past, there was an executive there named Emma Watts, who I'd met a couple times, who was very impressive. And I really liked her. She really seemed to know what's up. And so 20th Century Fox was, you know, a storied studio. It has been, since Disney purchased it, nothing has happened. Except the man that is the president of 20th Century Studios, full disclosure, I know him a little bit because of the Inglorious Trexperts podcast. And, you know, we chat on Twitter occasionally. But, I mean, I don't know him. I haven't worked with him. We've never broken bread. But the current president of 20th Century Studios is a man named Steve Asbell. And Steve Asbell began in the entertainment industry back in the 90s. And he did internships, and then he was promoted and became a vice president. I believe he became a vice president in 2012. But he's been working at the studio for over 2 decades now. Steve was promoted. I would like to read this article about Steve Asbell, the current president of 20th Century Studios. This is from Boris Kitt, wrote this article in the Hollywood Reporter and Heat Vision on March 3rd, 2022. 10 plus movies a year for Hulu, Avatar, more Free Guy, 20th Century Studios president on the company's future. Steve Asbell marking his 20th anniversary with the company. So actually, I guess, there you go, 2002 is when he started, but I think he was an intern before that. Speaks about straddling the traditions of old studio and those of its new Disney owners. There was already enough pressure on Steve Asbell as he began the first day of his new job as president of 20th Century Studios in March 2020. The preceding few years were tumultuous for the company as Disney initiated and finalized its acquisition of the venerable studio, leaving the future of many employees, divisions, and films uncertain. The nadir was the resignation of President Emma Watts in January 2020, leaving the now Disney-owned division leaderless. But that was all prelude to Asbell's baptism by fire, the pandemic and the shutdown that hit the industry. My first official day on the job happened to be the last day of shooting in France for The Last Duel, Asbell recalls. He called director Ridley Scott and they had a tough conversation about options and risks. They decided to shut down the movie. It was a strange first day, for sure. 2 years later, the movie world is in a different place, and Asbell, leading an executive team of veterans and newcomers, has the last of the old Fox movies behind him while debuting the first completed film, No Exit, on Hulu on February 25th. The thriller is the first on a slate that will skew heavy on Disney's streaming strategy while also making a few key theatrical titles. 20th Century begins a return to the office. Asbell, marking his own 20th anniversary with the company, sees himself as the keeper of the flame, straddling the traditions of the old school and those of its new owners, but also as part of a storied team of studio leaders. In terms of the creative leadership, it's like they let me sub into the all-star team, Asbell enthuses, noting other heads ranging from Marvel's Kevin Feige and Lucasfilm's Kathleen Kennedy to Disney's Sean Bailey, Pixar's Pete Docter, and Disney Animation's Jennifer Lee, all overseen by Disney Studios content chairman Alan Bergman. They are not only the best in-class producers and studio leaders, but they are the most generous colleagues you could ask for. It sounds like a line, but it's true. And Alan Bergman is like an Olympic coach, and he knows what each division needs. Now, you can see from this interview, Steve Asbell is also an incredibly nice guy and incredibly gracious. He doesn't seem like your typical studio head. In the offices on Disney's Burbank lot, Asbell has tried to recreate the feel of Building 88, the venerable edifice on the old 20th Century Fox lot that housed moguls, while keeping an eye on the demands of the 21st century. It's a very encouraging company culture, frankly speaking, he says. We remain the custodians of this incredible, almost 90-year-old filmmaking legacy, but get to act with the energy and ambition of a startup. Despite all the challenges of COVID, the shutdowns, the impairment of exhibition, we've ended up having this incredibly productive first couple of years. Becoming part of the Disney family has created an opportunity to expand our film output, particularly in streaming, which was not expected when I started. Films were shutting down and we were looking at a potentially smaller number of films. We're actually making more than ever. In relation to the other brands, Marvel, Star Wars, Pixar, Disney Animation, we are closer to what you call general entertainment on the TV side. Some films will be more Disney adjacent, Avatar, Free Guy, Planet of the Apes, and some films will be edgier. We remain making commercial films for a global audience. We remain what we've always tried to be, which is a supportive working environment for talent. But thanks to this increase in streaming output, with the exception of a few titles, all of our movies will launch on Hulu domestically, Star Plus internationally, which allows us to make the genres that we love, genres that Disney doesn't make in the other divisions, and that we haven't been able to play with as much in recent years. Comedy, thriller, young adult, horror. We get more of these at-bats, and we can make more bets on new talent. Sounds like a great guy, right? He is. He is a great guy. Now, here's what's really interesting. On Hulu, we have seen the results of what Steve has done. We've seen a Hellraiser movie. We've seen a great alien invasion thriller. We've seen Prey. Probably, arguably, maybe the best Predator movie since the original, of which there might be another. There is also Free Guy. And this year, May, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which just moved its date. It moved off of Furiosa's date to May 10th, brought it up 2 weeks. And I would dare say, I know everyone who's watching this, aside from Dune 2, everyone else's most eagerly awaited movie is Deadpool and Wolverine. Now, what I find interesting about Deadpool and Wolverine, Sean Levy, who directed Free Guy, is also directing Deadpool and Wolverine. Deadpool and Wolverine it's a Fox X-Men movie. I mean, let's face it. It's a Fox X-Men movie. And if half the cameos that we've heard reported on are true, it truly is a Fox movie. And it's not just the X-Men, as we know. So it's basically a cornucopia of all the things that Fox made while Steve was working there. All the way back his 20-year stint. In a way, Deadpool and Wolverine is a culmination of Steve's whole experience at 20th Century Fox. And he has a relationship with everybody who worked on that movie. He also knows, James Cameron. Steve was there when they made Avatar. And lest we forget, 20th Century Fox was pretty much James Cameron's home beginning in 88 with Avatar. With The Abyss, and then, of course, True Lies, and then even the movies that James Cameron didn't direct, like Catherine Bigelow's underappreciated Strange Days. Hey, Strange Days. Yeah, guess what's not on 4K? Strange Days. And oh yeah, Steven Soderbergh's Solaris. Those are Fox movies, too. Come on, people. What's going on? Why is Disney and I've said this before, since Fox was acquired by Disney, do you know, now Fox had its own 4K remasters, but they've only remastered one Fox title since they've had the entire Fox library that wasn't made by James Cameron. Don't understand that. But anyway, so literally now, while Steve's talking about Hulu, that has changed. So Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, Wolverine and Deadpool, and Fede Alvarez's Alien Romulus. So basically, Disney's, aka Fox's, aka Steve's slate, and I know I'm sort of grandfathering him in over there for Deadpool and Wolverine, but I mean, it's not like Steve didn't know Kevin Feige for 20 years either when he was working on those movies, like the X-Men movies and, well, okay, Daredevil and Elektra, you know. But it's not like they're not one big happy fleet. So anyway, Disney has 3 giant tentpole films coming out this year. That, by all accounts, the new Planet of the Apes series, the first 3 were terrific. You know, as a lifelong Planet of the Apes fan, when I went and saw Rise of the Planet of the Apes, I'm like, confidence was not high. I loved it. I loved Rise of the Planet of the Apes. I was stunned by it. And you know what? Even though it was an updated version of the Apes films and they didn't use John Chambers makeup, which is totally understandable, it still worked as a great prequel and in its own right, a great film with the original Planet of the Apes, which I thought was miraculous. Now we're getting a 4th film. And just as an aside, you've heard me say this a million times on this channel. Why isn't there a Go Ape button on Disney Plus? Do you know that Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, say it with me now, is the 10th Planet of the Apes feature film outside of the amalgamations of the live-action TV series episodes that were cut together as movies? 10. Do you know what? When I worked in home video for 20 years, do you know what they would use as an excuse to remaster movies? Well, when there was either a sequel or another version of something coming out, the studios would, especially Fox, they were very good at this. I know because I worked for their home video division. But they would put stuff out, and when it came to the Planet of the Apes movies, they did a Caesar box for DVD, literally a bust of Caesar, and you could open up a flap in the back where you got the discs out of. And then for Blu-ray, they released a beautiful slip-cased version of all 5 Planet of the Apes movies with both versions of Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. They had the R-rated version too, which the only way you could see that was on your Japanese Laserdisc, which I still have right over there. But Fox knew the value of the Planet of the Apes movies. Planet of the Apes and James Bond, they were my jam before there was Star Wars, before there were Star Trek movies. Why is Disney not remastering the 5 original Planet of the Apes movies? Why aren't they doing a massive marketing push for Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes? By all accounts, I've heard very recently that it was good. It looks great. But Disney, they're not. I mean, if there's one franchise that Disney can embrace, besides dinosaurs over at Universal, kids love Planet of the Apes. I love Planet of the Apes. All kids love Planet of the Apes. And yet, where's the Planet of the Apes love? 10 Planet of the Apes features. The 5 originals, Tim Burton's remake, the 3 Apes movies, the Fox trilogy that they made with Andy Serkis, and then this new film, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which makes it 10. 10. There's only 5 Indiana Jones movies, and that's got its own thumbnail on Disney Plus. There's also an animated series and a live action series. All of those things could be on Disney Plus. They could be using Disney Plus to be promoting Planet of the Apes. They could have had a behind the scenes making of, like dropping on a weekly basis or a monthly basis to promote Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Why Fox gets no love? You know what did get love? Fox Searchlight, which is now just Searchlight, came over to Disney as well. They were a separate entity, but they were like the drama club of 20th Century Fox. They were like the erudite kids that were talking about August Strindberg and making Oscar bait movies, or they were acquiring Oscar bait movies. And I get it. Disney has that. They got Poor Things in the theater. Poor Things, $100 million gross. I get it. But so here's the thing. Steve Asbell, the thing that makes him so unique is that dude loves movies. And you know what else he does? He reads books. And he has spent his life in the service of knowing what a good story is. He knows genre literature. He knows horror, science fiction, fantasy. He's the guy. There's no one else like him, with the possible exception of Kevin Feige. But Steve Asbell, I think, casts a wider net than Kevin Feige does in terms of his breadth of knowledge, although they bond on the Star Trek tip. And I would be remiss if I don't mention that Steve Asbell, Kevin Feige, and Terry Matalas are appearing on the 300th episode of the Inglorious Treksperts this week. So tune in and hear all three creators, producers, and studio presidents wax rhapsodic about Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. Look, no one's perfect. Okay? I understand this love of Star Trek 3. I get it. There's one really terrific scene there's a lot of terrific scenes. And ILM, before they started phoning it in, the last great Star Trek work they did, effects-wise, well, Star Trek 6 has some good stuff in it too, but Star Trek 3's space effects are terrific. And the Grissom was a nice addition to Starfleet ship design. But anyway, tune in and hear them talk. But Steve knows his shit. Of all the studio executives who work, Steve knows genre. Alien Romulus is coming out in August. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes in May. And Deadpool and Wolverine. I'm calling it a Fox X-Men movie. Disney can call it an MCU film. But we all know best. We all know better. I mean, we all saw those pictures of Halle Berry dressed as Storm that dropped back in last May in 2023. She had that shorter haircut. They know what's up. And you have Sean Levy. And you have, of course, you think that Steve Asbell doesn't know Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman? Oh, yeah. Remember, they made all those Deadpool and Wolverine movies, too. The good ones and the bad ones. Deadpool's only had 2 good ones, so it's good. But Steve Asbell is, I like to call him, the quiet king of the franchises. Also, Avatar. I mean, Avatar, Predator, Alien, Planet of the Apes. I mean, aside from making R-rated Alien and Planet of the Apes movies, R-rated Alien and Predator movies, these are bankable franchises that have long histories, and 3 of those movies. Now, I don't know if Deadpool and Wolverine is going to open with the 20th Century logo. If I made that movie, and I would assume I would be willing to bet, I'll put money down on it. They might have to, for whatever reason, put the 20th Century Studios logo on it, but it wouldn't surprise me if that movie opens with the 20th Century Fox logo, and that's how come we've seen the blown-up 20th Century Fox logo in the behind-the-scenes photos. I mean, because that's the kind of thing that they would do, and it should open that way. I hope it does, but either way, so you've got 3 movies. Disney, it's Fox that's going to save, or 20th Century Studios. That's Disney's hope for 2024. And Steve Asbell is the man riding that wave, not quite like Kurt Russell in Escape from LA, but close. And he's bringing those movies in. He oversaw those movies. He oversaw Predator. I mean, based on the deal that they made, they couldn't put it out theatrically. But maybe they can for the next one. I mean, Steve Asbell is the man. Not only is he the president of 20th Century Studios, but he understands these franchises better than any studio president, I dare say, in the last half century. I mean, look, you could say, well, Rob, didn't Alan Ladd greenlight Star Wars? Yeah, but he didn't love sci-fi. He just knew that Universal just had a hit in American Graffiti and probably didn't understand why Universal didn't want to make Star Wars. So Alan Ladd said, well, let's take a shot on the kid. But no one else knows genre cinema or franchise cinema better than the quiet king. You don't hear about Steve Asbell in the trades. You don't hear about, he just quietly goes about his business and does the work. Doesn't need to go to parties. I mean, everyone likes parties, but he's got his nose to the grindstone because he loves it. That's the one thing I do know about him. Never worked with him. Maybe he's a nightmare. I don't know. I don't think so. But the times I've interacted with him, it is very apparent he exudes the love of cinema and he exudes the love of these properties. And his story sense is impeccable. Second to none. He's also got, lest we forget, The First Omen is coming out. So, I mean, they're checking all the boxes off. And to be honest, that looks pretty good. I think it could be pretty good. But so if I had an asset, and to be fair, while all these movies have come out, Steve doesn't exactly get to develop whatever he wants. It's still Disney. It's still Disney's show. And I have, quite frankly, and I know I've not gone to one of these, but I've heard that Steve Asbell started having screenings of older Fox movies to the employees at Disney to sort of show them what the legacy, because they don't know fuck all about their own library. So why not have the president of the studio say, hey, everybody, hey, you Disney people, why don't you learn something about the storied legacy of 20th Century Fox, that's now 20th Century Studios, that you should see because, well, we've got these movies coming out. And he also, not everything. Maybe they spent too much money on Boogeyman or something like that, but Asbell knows what's up. And if there was one studio executive that I would want to pitch genre material to, it would be Steve. But, so what happened this week? What was announced this week that I thought was perhaps not the greatest thing in the world? And I'm sort of perplexed by this. So it was announced that there was a gigantic shakeup at Disney in their the executive branch, whatever you want to call it, the executive studios, the executive suites, I guess, would be the industry parlance for all of that. And big shakeup at Disney. And I want to get into it. Obviously, this is another article that comes from our friends over at Deadline. And it has to do with Steve. But before before I jump into this and talk about what happened at Disney, which is kind of, to me, shocking, let me rattle through some of these super chats. Hunter Becknell, for $10, says, I just rewatched Dune Part 1, and a lot of things make more sense and are a lot more clear the second time around. One thing I forgot was Paul's ability to do mind tricks. Yes, because he's been taught by his Bene Gesserit witch of a mother how to do those things, so definitely. And there's a lot more that comes into play, like using the voice, that kind of thing. Garrett Groover says, what are your favorite lesser-known and underrated Sharon Stone movies? Gloria, the remake of Cassavetes. You could go back all the way back to the Alan Quartermain films. But I'll tell you what one of my favorite lesser-known Sharon Stone movies is. The Michael Caton Jones directed Basic Instinct 2 gets no respect. And by the way, I have a banger of an idea for Basic Instinct 3. I know how we can revive this franchise. We can make the third one. We can make the Return of the King of Basic Instinct movies. Or we could make the what's another good third movie in a franchise? I don't know if I can sell that. We can make the Rocky 3 of Basic Instinct. And what do I predict for the film? Pain. Anyway, probably that. I mean, I'm being, I'm not going to say sliver, much as I might like to, even though it was based on an Ira Levin novel. Same man who wrote Rosemary's Baby. Can't say that. Not in good conscience. Oh, wait a minute. Okay. Here's the greatest. I'm going to tell you, this movie's bad. It's a bad movie. But that said, I dearly love this movie. And on the show, I talk a lot about these kinds of things. It has a great John Barry score, and it's a big, full-on studio production. The Specialist. Now, I'm telling you, I own it. I have the Blu-ray. I'll freely admit it. I bought this movie. I'm not going to say it was good. I'm going to say that I love it, but it's not good. But if you want to see, I mean, here's a movie that has naked Sharon Stone in a shower with Sylvester Stallone. It's a love scene, and the camera spends more time lingering on Stallone's body than it does Sharon Stone's. That's pretty much all you need to know about the film. But boy, does it have a great John Barry score. So there you go, The Specialist. Thanks for writing in. I really appreciate that, Garrick. And Hunter, too. Thomas Bennett says, I know you've said a larger budget led to higher box office, but post-COVID, is it just executives refusing to try smaller budgets? That's a good question. Look, here's another thing. Steve Asbell's been making films not in those, well, now they're in higher budget ranges, but, you know, keeping the budget for a movie. I know it's a Hulu movie, but Hellraiser, Prey was made for less than $100 million. I think, here's the thing. What has happened with studio budgets over the last 30 years is studios used to be primarily making movies for the domestic market. Now they're making movies for the global market. And many films, such as the Fast and Furious franchise, the Bond franchise, make more money in foreign markets than they do domestically, sometimes substantially more money. And I think that one of the problems is that the people that are actually making movies have come to rely on a system that inherently spends more money than they need to spend. I mean, if you really look at it, Dune 2 cost less than $200 million. When you read reports that Gladiator 2 is past $300 million, you know, and when you see Dune 2, the incredible spectacle of it all, again, you know, you had Denis Villeneuve work his way up from independent cinema, doing like Polytechnic and Incendies, and he works his way up. He knows how to make movies and manage, like, for instance, effects. A lot of directors that are working for the studios, which is crazy now, do not have the grasp and understanding of how to do the kinds of things that directors of yore. I mean, Colin Trevorrow goes and makes Safety Not Guaranteed for $1 million. Then he jumps into Jurassic World. And the reason that this happens and that you need all of these armies of people doing all of these effects, and that's what the studios have come to need in order to feel safe about the movies that they're making. They're spending exorbitant sums of money, and I think it's because the way movies are made in Hollywood, they don't know how to do it any other way. It's interesting. Everybody should watch Toho's 6-minute video on the making of Godzilla -1, and look at how they did the effects. And I'm looking at that going, why doesn't Hollywood make movies that way anymore? But they don't know how. So it's not post-COVID. It's the fact that they have to have armies of people creating spectacles for worldwide audiences, and they need armies of people to do it because they don't even know how to make movies on a smaller scale anymore. They have to in order to feel safe about their investments, things like, I'm oversimplifying this, but they don't know how anymore. They don't know how to make a studio movie for the kind of money that they have to spend. They have to spend more money now because that's what they've fallen into, a methodology that requires a certain amount of money being spent. And it's sort of crazy. Scott Bartholomew says, I'd like to see a big screen adaptation of Watership Down by Richard Adams. There was a big screen adaptation of Watership Down by Richard Adams. It's a beautiful film. I have it on Blu-ray. It came out from Criterion. If you haven't seen it, it's animated. I mean, maybe you want to see a live action film. I mean, it would still be CG, photorealistic animation. Watership Down's a great movie. So you can get it. Our friend RRTNZ says Chuck Norris was in Dune 2. He played the desert. So he like Kurt Russell played Ego the Living Planet. Chuck Norris is Arrakis. I like that. That's pretty funny. Fat Steven has gifted 5 memberships. I think, or thank you. That's weird. I'm seeing an indicator I haven't seen, but thank you, Fat Steven. Fat Steven says, Basic Instinct 3, The Rising Denim of Pluto Nash. You know what? Don't even... You think I'm kidding. You think I'm kidding. I'm telling you, man, I know how I got the story. I want to get, like, Steve Zalian to write the script for Basic Instinct 3. Or better yet, you know what? Bring Joe Esterhaus out of mothballs. I'll take the story credit. I'll pitch him my story. He writes the script, and you know what? Here's what's crazy. This is even the craziest thing ever. And people think I'm nuts. I get John McTiernan to direct it. Pull him out! He's only done that great gaming commercial. People would think I was crazy. I'd never work again. But come on, Basic Instinct, The Rising Denim of Pluto Nash. No. I'm serious about this. I have a good idea. 1001 Johnny says, hey, Rob, in the spirit of what you and I talked about for the membership chat, how film fans today forget films that influence films. Do you think there's notable influences that the Planet of the Apes series had on the films that came after it, besides references? Well, I'll tell you something. Probably so, but one of the things about the Planet of the Apes series that doesn't get enough credit, I think, is how different all 5 of the original films are. And yet they had Paul Den, who was the screenwriter of the latter films. There's a lot of continuity there. They have a continuity. But every film is wildly different than the film that followed. I mean, obviously, the first Planet of the Apes is one of the greatest science fiction films of all time, and it's amazing. But beneath the Planet of the Apes, when I was a kid, I loved Planet of the Apes. But when you're a kid, beneath the Planet of the Apes is the greatest thing in the world. First of all, mutants go to war with apes, and then you still have James Franciscus. You've got Nova coming back. They worship a bomb. I mean, people, we reveal ourselves to our God, and the mutants take their faces off. I mean, when you're a kid, there's nothing better than Beneath the Planet of the Apes. And then you've got Escape from the Planet of the Apes as the third film, where you've got apes coming back to 1970s LA. Even as a kid, I was like, come on, who rebuilt that ship? How could they get that thing back in space? The Icarus could not fly again. Not even James Franciscus's version. If they could get it out, if they could get it out of Lake Powell, they still couldn't put that thing in space. But that's okay. I went with it. And then, of course, you have Conquest. Great. I think Conquest of the Planet of the Apes in terms of dystopian 70s sci-fi. People always talk about Logan's Run. They talk about the Omega Man. They talk about Soylent Green. They talk about No Blade of Grass. They talk about The Ultimate Warrior. They talk about Rollerball. People do not usually talk about the great dystopian vision of Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. And the R-rated version, come on, man, that is a banger. And then you get Battle for the Planet of the Apes, the movie that had the least amount of budget that wanted to have another war. And it's good stuff. So I think that there's not as much influence of the Planet of the Apes franchise as there probably should be. I don't think. But there, I don't know. I'd have to think about that. Scott D says, in the Fox deal, Disney got later Don Bluth animated films. That's very true. That's very true. I wonder what they've done with those Don Bluth animated films, or at least one of them, maybe? Who knows? Fat Steven sends in another super chat and says, the rising denim has a ring to it and a giggle. You know what? When you talk about rising denim, I think about a movie with Ryan O'Neal called So Fine. Watch the trailer. So Fine. Remember that? People don't remember that. But anyway, so I'm caught up with super chats. Let me just check in. Yeah, I'm caught up with super chats. Now, let me read this article. The point of this is that there was a huge shakeup at Disney. So when Disney acquired 20th Century Fox, now 20th Century Studios, they also acquired Fox Searchlight, which was, again, the drama club version of if 20th Century Fox was the high school, Fox Searchlight were the drama club kids. I mean, they acquired and made oscarbait movies. They put out a tremendous slate of films, impeccable taste, and I give it all up for Searchlight. Poor Things competing at the Oscars. Poor Things has made $100 million. You gotta love the people at Searchlight, and Searchlight has always been a formidable force, and it was a crown jewel along with the rest of 20th Century Fox. So when Disney acquired it, it made sense to keep Searchlight. So I don't want to ever be, I don't want anyone to think that I'm disparaging Searchlight. But so Steve Asbell is the current president since 2022 of 20th Century Studios. I think he's the perfect studio president. I think his understanding of genre material, knowing what's good, and the proof's in the pudding. Hellraiser, talk about a moribund franchise. I mean, my God, did they run that into the ground? While not perfect, the Hellraiser film that was on Hulu was pretty damn good. Really interesting, certainly beautifully made. It brought the franchise back, gave it a luster. Maybe one day we'll see that TV series. The Marvel Comics Hellraiser series had a lot of great stuff in it. I would love to see more Hellraiser. I love that franchise. It kind of became all things to all people, but I liked seeing it come back to its core values. Again, under Steve's watch. Same with Prey. Same with Alien Romulus. So Steve Asbell is the man, and I call him the quiet king of franchises because he's overseeing. I mean, and lest we forget, Avatar also. And the thing is, Disney seems to look at these things. Hopefully 2024 will change that. If Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is a banger, and Alien Romulus is a banger, and Deadpool and Wolverine, I know they're always going to consider that an MCU film, but it's not. It's a Fox movie. I think the point of that is to close the door forever on 20th Century Fox, and at the end of the movie, you're going to open into a new world, that is the kingdom. But you know what? Is that such a good thing? I don't know. I still think Days of Future Past is one of the great, most satisfying, and I'm a huge X-Men fan. I love that movie. X2, they stand tall, and Logan. I mean, that trilogy, or you could say if you watch X-Men 1, X2, Days of Future Past, the Bryan Singer X trilogy. I even like Apocalypse more than a lot of people do. Just, I'm telling you, the first half of Apocalypse is great too, and then Logan. And then you've got Deadpool 1 and 2, and now Deadpool and Wolverine. But so Steve Asbell, 3 of these movies. Anyway, so what happened at Disney this week? What happened? Let's find out, shall we? So this is what happened. Huge shakeup at Disney. Sean Bailey exits as president of Walt Disney's Motion Picture Studios. Searchlight's David Greenbaum takes over and will also run 20th Century Studios. Okay, first of all, what the fuck? Why? This is my question. Why? Disney needs a little help over there, Mr. Greenbaum. You know who doesn't need help? 20th Century Studios doesn't need help. 20th Century Studios is in good hands. And if 2024 plays out correctly, the quiet king of franchises, Mr. Steve Asbell, he's got you covered. I don't know, and look, I'm not privy to these decisions. I haven't talked to anybody about this. I don't know. This is just my opinion as a layperson looking out from my quiet perch here across the Southland. I do not get this. And frankly, I think it's a little it's perplexing to me. It's perplexing to me when you have someone who, since they took over as president of the studio in 2 years, has done nothing. I mean, sure, there's maybe things that have been disappointing, or they spent a lot of money on something that might not have turned out, but certainly not like the Marvels or like Wish. I mean, maybe you could look at Boogeyman and say it was a little disappointing. But I would say Disney has a lot more problems. You know who doesn't have problems right now? 20th Century Studios. But anyway, let's get into this. Let's see what this article is all about. This comes from our friend, Anthony D'Alessandro, and a man that I've always loved since I've been reading in Variety. He actually said some kind words about my film Free Enterprise 25 years ago, Michael Fleming. And this was published yesterday. Effective immediately, Walt Disney's president of Motion Picture Studios, Sean Bailey, who turned the company's animation vault into a multi-billion-dollar live-action movie business, is departing after 15 years on the lot. What did they run out of live-action classic, or did they run out of animated classics to remake? Damn it, I was really hoping for that live-action Fantasia remake. Guess I'm never going to get it now. Searchlight co-president David Greenbaum will take on the newly created role. He'll be the president of Disney Live Action and president of 20th Century Studios. Why? Why is this happening? The last thing Disney needs is somebody who's splitting their time between the studio that needs a lot of help and the studio that already has a president that knows what's up and knows a lot more about these kinds of movies than you do. Greenbaum's new title will be President of Disney Live Action and 20th Century Studios. He'll report to Disney Entertainment co-chairman. Steve Asbell will continue to serve as President, 20th Century Studios, a role he's had since March 2020. He will report to Greenbaum. This splits up the Searchlight Pictures executive team of Greenbaum and Matthew Greenfield, two of the most highly regarded execs in the prestige film space, who right now have it's disappearing. Who right now have Poor Things squarely in the Best Picture race and other Oscar categories. That duo succeeded longtime leaders Steve Galula and Nancy Utley after they championed and shepherded the Guillermo del Toro Best Picture winner, The Shape of Water. Greenfield will continue running Searchlight, and this is a big opportunity to broaden the Disney motion picture studio business beyond primarily mining the animation catalog for live-action hits. It's a full-circle moment for Bailey. He arrived at the studio as the producer of 2010's $400 million Christmas event titled Tron Legacy. That worked out well for him. And he'll stay on to produce Joaquin Renning's Tron Ares before moving on to more entrepreneurial endeavors. There was buzz Bailey was going to take over the top Netflix film job from Scott Stuber, who is departing the streamer, but that is not the case as we hear it. Sean has been an incredibly important member of the studio's creative team for well over a decade, said Bergman. He and his team have brought to the screen iconic stories and moments that have delighted fans around the world and will stand the test of time. I know he'll continue to do great things, and I couldn't be happier that he's staying on as a producer of Tron Ares. Okay. Anyway, and then it goes on and talks about what he did and doing all these remakes and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, I don't know if it talks more about Steve. But Steve Asbell is staying on as the president of 20th Century Studios, but he has to work for a guy who worked at Fox Searchlight, co-president of Fox Searchlight for a little less time than Steve has been president of 20th Century Studios. So my question about all of this is why? Why would they do this? Disney needs help. Why hire somebody that's being split between... I mean, I understand. Maybe Mr. Greenbaum is more storied. Maybe he went to Princeton or something. But it doesn't make sense to me that Steve Asbell, with his incredible story sense and his ability to deal with top-tier talent, first of all, he's interacting, I would imagine, he's already friends with Kevin Feige. He's got James Cameron, Sean Levy, everybody that's making all of these franchise pictures that are basically going to maybe save Disney's ass this year. Why would you do this to him? I don't understand. I mean, it says in this article, let's read this one more time and somebody explain what this means. Searchlight co-president David Greenbaum will take on a newly created role. He'll be president of Disney Live Action and president of 20th Century Studios. Steve Asbell will continue to serve as president. So president of 20th Century Studios, but Steve's still going to be president, 20th Century Studios, a role he's had since March 2020. I'm sorry, but can I just be incensed for Mr. Steve Asbell for, he'll never say anything. He's a consummate gentleman. But I'll say, what the fuck, man? What the fuck? A guy who made the world interested in Hellraiser again. The guy who gave us Prey that was way better than anybody thought. The guy who is showing Fox titles, classic films to your own employees so they know what the fuck movies, the catalog that no one's done fuck all with. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Alien Romulus with Fede Alvarez, who made 2 bangers in Evil Dead and Don't Breathe. I mean, that's a good choice. That is good. I'm sure that, Steve was the guy that put that shit together, man. That's another franchise. If you go by Prey and you go by Hellraiser, I am sure Alien Romulus is going to be a banger. After Alien Covenant, now, to be fair, somebody could say, throw that in my face, but you don't tell Ridley Scott no. It was a good idea. And you know what? I blame Damon Lindelof. Because you know who else? Hey, what do we got? What do we got in theaters this weekend? We've got Dune 2, and who wrote it? John Spates. And who wrote Alien? Who wrote Prometheus? John Spates. Who fucked it up? Damon Lindelof. That's just, watch Charlie de Lauzirika's 4.5-hour documentary on the Prometheus Blu-ray. You can watch it happen almost in real time. Whatevs. But I'm just going to say, why would you do this to Steve Asbell now? It's not right. And it's dumb. You guys have been sitting on the 20th Century Fox library for 5 fucking years. You've done nothing with it. You can't even license out Barbarian that has an audio commentary recorded for it. Where's that physical media? Where is David Pryor's The Empty Man? A Stone classic in waiting that you can't even get. Barely. Where's The Empty Man? Why don't you license those titles out to, hey, Disney, why don't you, and where's your touch, speaking of that, if I can just rant, where's the Touchstone Library? Where's Hollywood Pictures? Where's Ruthless People? Where's Down and Out in Beverly Hills? Where's our beloved Blood In, Blood Out in 4K? Where's any Fox title in 4K? Where's Patton in 4K? Where's all that jazz in 4K? I know that's a Columbia Fox co-production, but where is it? Let Criterion put it out in 4K. Give Barbarian and give The Empty Man to Second Sight. I don't understand this. You want to know why your stock price is down? Maybe it's inching back up a little. But, if your stock price goes up this year, you better put Steve Asbell as one of those reasons, because you have dishonored your quiet king of franchises who's over there quietly working away, nose to the grindstone, resurrecting moribund franchises and making them viable at the box office again. Now, a cynical person could say, well, hey, he was there when The Predator was made too. He was at Fox. But, it was a good bet. Shane Black coming back and doing a Predator movie. Who would say no to that? He made Iron Man 3 $1 billion hit. I would have gone with that. But come on, man. Why are you doing this, Disney? Why? Why, Damie? Why are you doing these things? I don't get it. I don't understand. Why would you take your quiet king of franchises, Predator, Alien, Hellraiser, Planet of the Apes, working on Avatar? He's the man. He's the guy behind the guy. And he doesn't ask, he doesn't, peacock around, prancing around, demanding shit. He should have a 1/350th scale of a refit enterprise in his office, but, hey, what can you do? I don't understand this. I don't understand, Disney. I own a few of your shares of stock. I'm going to complain at the next shareholders meeting. Why are you diminishing a man who has a 20-year storied history, who's president of 20th Century Studios? Why are you diminishing his position by putting somebody over him? One of the drama club kids. I mean, Fox Searchlight's great. But I don't know if somebody who works for Fox Searchlight is going to, get the director of Don't Breathe and Evil Dead, the remake, to come make Alien Romulus. I don't even know if that person be interested in Alien Romulus. No, I'm banking that Alien Romulus is going to be good. Because Prey was good. Thank God Prey came out. By the way, you put Prey out on physical media. Why wouldn't you put out Barbarian or Don't Breathe? I mean, or The Empty Man. Why do I have to have... Truth be told, I went to Stinky Tuna and bought a copy of The Empty Man. I bought a bootleg copy of it on Blu-ray. And David Pryor, who did all of David Fincher's special features, directed that movie, and you can't even get a decent physical media release of it. Why? This is shocking. Shocking. Disney, you're bad. Bad, bad, bad. Steve Asbell deserves better. He's your quiet king of franchises, and he can control the realm. He is a benevolent dictator, and he makes good movies that are going to make you money. Why do you disrespect him this way? I don't understand. I don't get it. I don't understand. It is a diss. It is not right. He's done nothing but good things for you. He has great talent relationships. And let's face it, if Wolverine and Deadpool and Wolverine are good, I'm going to give all the credit to Steve Asbell. And Kevin Feige, you're two resident Star Trek fans. Why don't you go buy that franchise? Have them run it. Make Star Trek great again. But anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about tonight. I do not understand this move as far as the executive shuffle. I don't get it. I don't understand. I feel it's a diss on a man that deserves better from you. I mean, okay, Poor Things is in the news, but great, $100 million. That's awesome. Terrific. And Oscar buzz and all that. And let's face it, Emma Stone looks good in that movie. I get it. I understand. But you know what? Steve Asbell is going to make you more money in the long run. And I'd remember that. So should the shareholders. But that's all I wanted to say. I don't know what you think. Right down there in the comments section. I mean, come on, man. Why do you do this? Why do you do this to people that are loyal to you? I don't like it. So there you go. I don't like the move. I think it's a bad move. And not to take away from David Greenbaum. I'm sure he's a delightful man, and Fox Searchlight's always been doing a great job. But it's not like he's been there for 20 years running Fox Searchlight and was responsible for The Shape of Water. Admittedly, Poor Things, but these are acquisitions guys. You know, I know they champion people like Guillermo del Toro, but still. Asbell worked his way up from internship to president of the studio. He's an American success story. And he's giving us a new Alien movie. He gave us a new Predator movie. He's giving us a new Planet of the Apes movie. And let's face it, he's giving us Deadpool and Wolverine because it's a Fox movie. So therein lies or ends my rant. Let's see what you guys have to say. I have letters to read. You guys are hilarious. Okay. Michael Nemo says, I remember So Fine. Nice jeans. Fat Steven says, Disney needs an exorcist at this point. Well, to be fair, Universal has The Exorcist now, and Exorcist Believer it went up the charts, the video charts, from 65 into the top 10 because they dropped the price. I'll tell you who needs an exorcist. Universal does, not Disney. Fat Steven says, we need a good remake of Mr. Boogedy. We do. Why not? But I don't want Steve Asbell to make it. Fat Steven says, hear me out. Fantasia remake to Infected Mushroom. God bless you, Fat Steven. For those of you who don't know, Infected Mushroom is a great Israeli electronic band. And when I went to Israel in 2005 and I showed my film, I went to Israel. I was invited as the guest of honor to the Icon Festival in Tel Aviv, and I went with Roger Nygard, who directed Trekkies, and Roger Nygard and I presented Free Enterprise, and he presented Trekkies, and I was given a gift of an Infected Mushroom 2-disc CD. So I got an Israeli band. I got their Israeli CD when I was in Israel. So I'm a huge Infected Mushroom fan. Good call, Fat Steven. Good call. Michael Nemo says, speaking of Fox, did you hear that Ryan Coogler is rebooting X-Files? Might be as good as Jordan Peele's forgettable Twilight Zone. Au contraire. Now, no one is a bigger X-Files fan than me, even though X-Files Fight the Future completely fucked up their mythology. And I was at the Saturn Awards one year, and I was sitting with Frank Spotnitz, and I asked him, I said, hey, man, because, we're there as professionals, filmmakers, that kind of thing. I asked him a very geeky question about the X-Files movie that I didn't understand. I'm like, okay, if the conspirators don't know that their little Arctic base is above a flying saucer that has thousands of people that are gestating alien hosts, if they think these alien hosts if they don't know this is happening, does that mean they've just never gone down in that spaceship? And if they've never gone down in that spaceship, who took the sarcophagus that's holding Dana Scully down there? And when I asked that question, he got up and left. Just saying. Yeah, I love the X-Files, but it totally went off the rails. Why? Because Chris Carter didn't understand his own mythology and they had nowhere to go. So they changed it up. It didn't work. I love the X-Files, though. Here's why I believe in Ryan Coogler. Ryan Coogler knows how, and I think the same reason he made Creed, him and his father, when his mother was sick, were watching Rocky movies over and over again, and that's where he got the idea to create Creed. If you look at the Rocky universe as a cinematic universe, the Rocky films are. He made a great entry into. He made a branch off the universe that the TVA doesn't have to go and cull. And he did a really great job. I think Ryan Coogler wants, if you love the X-Files, I think he wants to make, and I know nothing about what he wants to do, but I would imagine that he wants to keep it in continuity. And look, nothing was more disappointing than the last 2 seasons of X-Files, the revival of X-Files. It was great to see Scully and Mulder back, but the episodes were what a crushing disappointment. I mean, we live in clown world now. They could have been making it was almost like a parody. It wasn't good. I think Ryan Coogler will bring back a reverence to it. I think he'll do a good job. I really do. Deez Webos says, have you seen 2019's Project Blue Book? No, but I did watch the original Project Blue Book on TV. And one of the great things about the original Project Blue Book is you could tell all the model kits that they used to make their flying saucers. They used a lot of the Millennium Falcon, by the way. But I didn't see the new one. I never watched that. Daryl Raw 7798 says, hey, Rob, I don't know if you've talked about it, but I was wondering if you saw Denis Villeneuve's comments in regards to dialogue in movies and your thoughts in regards to that. And if you did see those comments, okay, what you're referring to is Denis Villeneuve said on the press tour for Dune that he would love to make a movie that he thinks that dialogue, he doesn't like dialogue. He thinks dialogue is for theater and TV. And he wants to make a movie without dialogue, a purely cinematic experience. I'm all for it. I'd love to see Denis Villeneuve make a purely cinematic experience that has no dialogue. You could easily make a movie without dialogue. People really have done it. I mean, Luc Besson's first science fiction feature, Le Dernier Combat, The Last Combat, is almost dialogue-free. And there have been movies in cinema history that have been pretty much dialogue-free. And I have no problem with that. I think he was being a little hyperbolic because I think, I don't think you'd want to live in a world where Humphrey Bogart didn't say, here's looking at you, kid. Or you played it for her, you played it for me, you play it for me. Play it, Sam. I think that dialogue is great. And I don't think it's necessarily just theater and TV. But I would love to see Denis Villeneuve make a dialogue-free film. I think it'd be really interesting. Thomas Logan says, rumor is Ryan Gosling will play Commander Bill Norton in Villeneuve's Rendezvous with Rama. Also, Jake Gyllenhaal is being sought out for Jimmy Pack. Look, I don't know. I haven't read an official. Is that officially what he's going to do? Is Rendezvous with Ram? I've been hearing this. By the way, I mean Kimberly Pierce at one point was going to direct Childhood's End. Now, Rendezvous with Rama, Fincher was going to do Rendezvous with Rama. I hope so. Right now, the thing that I most want to see, it starts shooting in June. As everyone knows, Project Hail Mary, Andy Weir's book, Project Hail Mary, was the most wildly entertaining book I read last year. It will make a great movie. If Lord Miller do it, it's going to be a banger. It's going to be, I think, if done right, it's going to be a classic science fiction film, one for the ages. It's got the right tone to be a populist smash hit. So let's hope that's what happens. Scott Bartholomew says, besides Dune, have you a favorite remake that surpassed the original? Well, there's the three. There's the triumvirate of remakes that I think surpassed the original. First, beginning with Philip Kaufman's 1978 Invasion of the Body Snatchers. While I do like the original, I think Philip Kaufman's Invasion of the Body Snatchers, even today, holds up as one of the great science fiction movies of the modern era. I love that film. If you guys have not seen it, get the 4K disc. It's out. You can get one from Arrow, or you can get it domestically from Kino Lorber. It is an incredible film. Philip Kaufman made it before The Wanderers, or after The Wanderers, and before The Right Stuff. It is a fantastic, fantastic film that has lost none of its power. It's one of the creepiest movies ever made. And what I love about Philip Kaufman's Invasion of the Body Snatchers is it's a movie about an alien invasion that already happened, but the main characters just don't know it. It's great. The other one, John Carpenter's The Thing, is better than the original. And rounding out the trilogy, David Cronenberg's The Fly. Speaking of 20th Century Fox. By the way, 20th Century Fox, where's the 4K of that movie? I don't know. If you remember the great summer of 86, 20th Century Fox was promoting their 3 genre movies of the summer. What were they? Say it with me now. Aliens, The Fly, and Big Trouble in Little China. The Coupe de Villes, that one-hit wonder. Yeah. Those are the 3. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, The Thing. There's probably other remakes that are better than the original, but those are the 3 that I always use. And if you want to throw in a 4th, Chuck Russell's remake of The Blob. Pretty good. You know, and you want to hear my favorite unsung remake, and I'm going to say this. People have been talking about it. It's been showing up on Twitter lately. I don't know why, but the greatest unsung remake that people do not talk about enough is the remake of The Crazies, starring Timothy Olyphant. That movie is a banger. A great, great, great film. You know why? Because Timothy Olyphant is smart in that movie. That was very, very, very well scripted. I love that movie. And I would say, to go even further, Gore Verbinski's remake of The Ring is a great remake. 100%. Sean Hoover says, Scott Bartholomew says, yes, I was referring to a CGI version of Watership Down. I mean, do we need to see like that? I don't know. I could be. I just think it would be kind of I don't know if we need it, because I love the original. Sean Hoover says, why the obsession with budgets? Why should I care? How does it impact me? Ticket prices, sure, but it's not like they discount low-budget films at the box office. Well, here's the thing. You shouldn't. The audience should not care how much a movie costs. It doesn't matter. And I think we become way too obsessed with it. We don't even know what that means anyway. Movie-going audiences don't know what any of that means, to be honest. So I think you're absolutely right. We don't care. The problem is, I think we've been made to care. Box office, all that is something that we weren't usually aware of, but now we are. We're hyper aware of it. But the real problem is why are movies as expensive as they are? And I think it's because the people, they're the grand masters of the genre, Christopher Nolan and Denis Villeneuve, that are arguably 2 of our best filmmakers working today. They had the right path. They started out working in indie cinema. They were then tapped by the studios. They work within the studio system, working their way up. And they are where they are now because they've learned how to make movies over and over and over again. We don't have a lot of new directors that are doing that. There's some people, like Robert Eggers, maybe Ari Aster, people like that. Hell, man, I'm a huge fan of Karen Kusama. I don't know why after The Invitation and Destroyer, why she isn't working more. I don't know why Catherine Bigelow, I know she turned 70. She's probably not one. I would love it if Catherine Bigelow made one more movie. Maybe one more movie at Fox or 20th Century Studios. Because that would be good. So anyway, I do have some letters I want to read to you. And by the way, one of the big things on this channel is you can send me letters right there at that address below. And this is this letter comes from Stu. For why, MCU? For why? Is the subject, quoting the great Chris Carr, who always asks the question, for why? Hi, Rob. First of all, let me just say that I really appreciate your channel. Thank you. I think you would make a great teacher, a professor of film, if you will. It is with that in mind, I would very much appreciate your insight into what the fuck is going on over at Marvel Studios. On the surface, this might seem like a flippant comment, but as somebody who is heavily invested in this stuff, I really don't have an answer. I know Bob Chapek took over and diluted the brand by pushing for more and more content for Disney+, but he's gone now, and the content doesn't seem to be improving. Granted, maybe it hasn't been long enough to see the benefits of Chapek's exit, but by all accounts, Marvel thought they had a huge hit, and more importantly, a good film on their hands with Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. More worrying is the fact that Echo was made under the scrutiny of Kevin Feige himself. Is this the same Kevin Feige that oversaw all of Phase 1, movies culminating in the first Avengers film? Surely not. Surely, I should say that in George Takei's voice. Has Feige simply lost his way? It's a troubling thought. If Feige has simply lost his way due to being surrounded by a bunch of yes men, then how long will it take for the goodwill he has earned over the past decade as one of Hollywood's biggest ever earners to run out? If his thumb is no longer on the pulse of the audience, then how long will he be allowed to continue? I don't want to see a Fantastic Four movie made under the current regime. I don't want the X-Men to be given the shitty end of the stick in a rush to emulate the success of the Infinity Saga. One problem seems to be that Marvel is trying to create franchises within a franchise. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania wasn't really an Ant-Man film. Virtually every character in that film was wearing an Ant-Man suit. This really dilutes the character of Ant-Man, and we see it across the board now with Marvel properties. With the Marvels, it wasn't a Captain Marvel film. We're given 2 other Captain Marvels to hold our interest just in case the dim-witted audience can't maintain our concentration for long enough to make it to the end of the film without passing out in a puddle of our own drool. Marvel never used to patronize the audience in this way. In Captain America: The First Avenger, it's a good 30 minutes before we see Steve transform into Cap, and it ends with a shot of a black and white photo of a skinny Steve. Peggy loved him like this, and so did we. They made us fall in love with the character. What confuses me is, why is this happening? How can Kevin Feige, our Lord and Savior, the man who gave us The Winter Soldier and Infinity War, how can this Kevin Feige be serving us shite like Secret Invasion and Echo? I honestly didn't watch past the first episode of Echo because the character is so unlikable. I don't care if she fights Daredevil because I don't care about her. I care more about a 4-foot-nothing skinny Steve Rogers holding a dustbin lid in a back alley, standing his ground against a guy twice his size in a fight he knows he's going to lose. How can the same studio that made us fall in love with skinny Steve Rogers make a show like Echo? I just don't get it. What is particularly worrying is that Marvel seems to be so out of touch that they think throwing us a random cameo such as Beast is going to get people interested again. By the way, another Fox movie. The old Kevin Feige would have considered what this meant to the wider cinematic universe. How is this going to affect the impact of when the X-Men are finally introduced into the MCU? This seems like something Sony would do with its Spider-Verse. If Feige has some plan for the Beast moving forward, Well, there is an X-Men movie coming out from Fox in July. In May, you've got Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Then how can we see, then how are we, the audience, supposed to care when we've been teased and promised with so much that has never come to fruition? Be it Shang-Chi, the Eternals, the Celestials, Charlize Theron, Baron Mordo. I could go on. To quote the captain himself, I can do this all day. It seems like the Marvel ship is truly adrift, and they're trying to figure it out as they go along. To summarize, Rob, and bring my rant to an end, I know what the issues are, but I don't know why they exist. I would really love to hear your opinion on what is going on over at Marvel Studios and whether you can give me any hope for the immediate future. After all, the Fantastic Four and X-Men's heads will be on the block next if the course is not corrected. What a shame it would be to see them not get the treatment they deserve. Please help me, Obi-Rob Kenobi. You're my only hope. Cheers, Stu. Well, Stu, that's a great letter, but here's the thing, man. No one loved the Infinity Saga more than I did. Look, I think if you go back and you watch Iron Man 2 now, it's a lot better than you remember because everyone criticized it because it spent so much time setting up the rest of the MCU. But you go back and you watch it now, it's a very enjoyable movie. And seeing Don Cheadle and Tony and Robert Downey Jr. back-to-back in suits of armor fighting Justin Hammer's drones are pretty badass. I love that shit. Look, Alan Taylor, it was a good hire, just didn't work out for Thor the Dark World, but they pivoted. I don't understand myself. I mean, the Infinity Saga is the 23 movies of the Infinity Saga, and you have to include Spider-Man Far From Home in that because that was the end of the Phase 3. Arguably, the most successful franchise in the history of Hollywood. Those 23 movies. More so than the Bond films, more so than the Star Wars movies, more so than Harry Potter, more so than Planet of the Apes. Take your pick. More so than Fast and Furious. Whatever long-running franchise you want to cite, the 23 Infinity Saga films work together collectively $1 billion each. Those movies. Collectively, averaged out over 23 movies. $1 billion each. Stunning. And I don't know. I mean, I think that part of the problem was they decided to start Disney Plus, and they bet on Star Wars and Disney Plus. Hey, okay. It's the mindset and the thinking that is not defined by the studios, but by their corporate minders. Whether you want, everyone says BlackRock and Vanguard, but they're not entirely wrong. DEI initiatives and the kind of money they want to see. The problem is the entertainment business, especially the movie and TV business, but movies especially, do not work like other businesses. They don't work like real estate. They don't work like the commodities market, even though movies are a product. Movies, when they work best, are a collision and a synthesis of art and commerce together. Because movies are expensive to make, but you need the cash, you need the capital. And in this day and age, the studios are borrowing money from banks to make these movies. So interest payments are an issue. But what ends up happening is the people at the top, you're going to make a streaming service, then people just say, well, Kevin Feige, we expect you to make 5 Marvel shows in addition to the 3 or 4 movies you're going to make for us a year in the same amount of time, but compressed, and you've tripled the workload. So even Kevin Feige, he for a while walked on water. I don't know what he was supposed to do other than accept that challenge. I don't think he wanted to, but he wasn't really given a choice. Why? I don't understand how the theatrical model, it's crazy to me that we're now seeing the viability when it comes to streaming, that if a movie has gone into the theater and has had a theatrical run, it will bring more people. We're also seeing the conventional wisdom was that we're going to make all these new shows for streaming and people are going to watch those shows, and streaming is going to become our new savior. Because the reason that a streaming service is attractive to a studio is because it's guaranteed cash flow, which is something a studio never had before. because you could spend $200 million on a movie, but if it doesn't hit, then you're stuck with making that payment back to the bank. You're borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. What a streaming service could do with all of your existing catalog, which is the genius part of it, you put everything that you own up and you charge people a certain amount of money, so you know that every month you're going to get $1 billion in subscription fees in to your studio. So that's $12 billion a year as a baseline. But the problem was the studios started and the streamers started spending in this weird streaming wars where everybody, and then they find out at the end of the day that it's all this legacy material that does best on streaming services. Like, people will pay if they can watch Friends. Netflix, famously in 2019 paid $100 million to air Friends for one more season. And as we've seen, a movie like that Roy Lee was a producer on, The Mother with Jennifer Lopez, will garner more viewers on a $40 million budget than The Gray Man will at $220 million. These economics are things that I will never understand how we got into this mess in the first place. But in terms of, and why do Disney, what to me is such a strange thing is Disney, I get that they want to maintain a certain level of quality, but I think Disney got into real trouble because they had a very limited, there's not a lot of, the talent pool doesn't just expand. I mean, I don't know the real reason. I really don't. I know that everybody was I can't even imagine being Kevin Feige. It's already tough to manage 3 or 4 movies a year at that level of quality and then be expected to make 4 or 5 TV shows. It's impossible. It's literally impossible. And then when he did try and delegate to other people, you wind up with a show that, and this is the thing that kills me. As a lifelong Marvel comic fan, when they decide to go do The Winter Soldier and they decide to use Ed Brubaker's run on Captain America as a jumping off point, great idea. It doesn't have to be a direct adaptation, but you have the design of the character, you have the premise of Bucky coming back as a Winter Soldier, how terrifying he gets unfrozen every couple of years to be used as an assassin. He doesn't remember who he is. Great idea. And they were so smart to bring on people like Marcus and McFeely, who wrote things like The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe for Disney, brought them on, kept them on, and Marcus and McFeely didn't just write a movie. They basically wrote Winter Soldier, Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame. I mean, these guys knew what the fuck they were doing, and Kevin Feige he understood how to go get talent. Like James Gunn might not have made a $170 million franchise property, but he'd worked in Hollywood a long time. He cut his teeth in independent movies, and his 2 films, Super and Slither, showed that while he wasn't working with a huge budget, he had the right sensibility as a director. That's when you can take him, and he's got the experience. He was right to pick James Gunn. Just like he went and looked at what the Russo brothers had and said, okay, they made one feature, and then they worked and done some great TV shows, but he could tell they were storytellers. You have the script, you have the team in place, but you need people that have a vision. I mean, I looked at She-Hulk and I'm like, okay, you've got your fourth wall breaking, Deadpool-esque character in Jennifer Walters. You've got the comic run. You've got the premise. I mean, what an irresistible premise. You're going to do your Ally McBeal LA Law show set in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, dealing with the fallout from what a world with metahumans is going to be. And then every episode they try and reinvent the premise. I mean, it was written by people. That show was unbelievably disappointing. I love Moon Knight. I hated that show. I hated it. I didn't understand if you're thinking Moon Knight, I get it. I understand why they use that iteration of Moon Knight. But go back to the original. Go back to your noir, romantic, Batman-esque character. Maybe they didn't want to do that because it was too Batman, but that Moon Knight show doesn't work. You have 2 Egyptian gods fighting each other over the Great Pyramids, eating souls from people off the streets of Cairo, and it's never mentioned again. What the fuck was that show even about? You never even got to see Moon Knight being Moon Knight. I mean, you go back and read the Doug Mensch, Bill Sienkiewicz run on Moon Knight, and you go, there it is. There's your show. And you have Werewolf by Night in it. I mean, it's just, I don't get it. And I don't presume to know. I just think ultimately biting off more than you can chew. Suddenly, what did Disney, I mean, they started a streaming service, and the only things that they had other than Disney movies in their catalog titles was whatever we were going to do with Marvel and Star Wars. I think Disney Plus, and you can talk about The Mandalorian, and I love Andor, but The Mandalorian is middling at best. Middling at best. Let's not hold The Mandalorian up as great television. It's middling at best. And Book of Boba Fett is one of the most embarrassing franchise entries. I know we love Star Wars and we don't want to criticize it. But that show, again, if you want to see what that show should have been, why didn't you go back and look at Yojimbo? Why didn't you, it's the fucking Fistful of Dollars. It's the Man with No Name trilogy. Go rip that off. I mean, it should have been the ultimate crime thriller. Boba Fett rolls into town. There's two warring factions at Mos Espa or whatever. I mean, my God, that show is an embarrassment. I'll tell you something. I would say that Boba Fett is closer to the Star Wars holiday special than it is to anything else. What they've allowed the Star Wars franchise to become is horrifying. And then on the other hand, you have an Academy Award-winning screenwriter going off and making Andor. I know it's not everyone's favorite Star Wars show because there's no lightsabers in it, but Andor was a Star Wars show that holds up. If I was going to tell somebody who'd never seen Star Wars, I would of course give them my 4K copies of the original version of Star Wars, and I would say, okay, here's what you got to do. You're going to watch Andor, you're going to watch Rogue One, Star Wars, and Empire, and then you're going to stop. Don't watch any other Star Wars stuff ever again. Leave it there. But that's just me. Anyway, I don't know what happened to the MCU. I think too much. They're way overextended. I mean, look at how Winter Soldier led into, first of all, look at how Avengers led into Age of Ultron, which led into how Winter Soldier then plays off of Civil War, and how they all built on each other. They had the meta story that was being added to. I mean, like you said in your letter, I look at the Marvels and I'm like, why didn't Carol Danvers get an Empire Strikes Back-esque epic cosmic story? What happened to James Gunn leaning into the cosmic universe? I mean, why wouldn't you have made a movie about what Captain Marvel went through during the snap? I mean, it was already a period piece. The first Captain Marvel is a period piece. So why not tell us a story that we didn't see? What was the galaxy like when it was falling apart? That we hear her mention it in Endgame. I would love to have seen that story. What did she have to do? Some kind of crucible, some kind of she had to make terrible choices to save people, the remaining people. They never did that. The Marvels is a fucking TV sitcom, and I don't get it. I don't understand. I've never seen something go off a cliff the way, and I liked Eternals. I thought there was a lot to like in Eternals, but even Eternals, it was an interesting introduction that went nowhere. Is Arishem the Judge going to come back? Are we going to deal with that? Are we going to deal with people talk about, there is a Celestial coming out, the whole cosmology of the Marvel Universe. And suddenly Man-Thing exists, and Werewolf by Night exists, and Blade's supposed to exist. Where are the vampires? There are now mutants. Where are the X-Men? I don't know. It's like I completely went off cliff. To be honest, the only thing that's coming out from Marvel right now that I am at all interested in is their Fox movie. Wolverine versus X-Men, Deadpool and Wolverine. I have no interest after what I've heard about Captain America, and I love Sam Wilson, and I really like, I have a movie that they've had to entirely reshoot. I have no interest. Fantastic Four movie, you haven't made me interested in it at all. The idea that it starts in the 1960s, like we were contemplating on the John Campy show, I've been talking about the fact that I thought that in Quantum Mania we were going to get a either post-credit scene or a scene when they find the Fantastic Four imprisoned in the quantum realm from the 1960s. So the idea that they're in the 60s, like they're going to Steve Rogers, they'll look at Captain America, the First Avenger, and they'll give us a story with the Fantastic Four. Why are they maybe John F. Kennedy? I think my friend, one of my friends said that they hope that it's Kennedy that calls them, that Reed Richards and Ben Grimm and Sue Storm and Johnny Storm are given the name the Fantastic Four before they get their powers when they go up into orbit or whatever. And then whatever happens in the movie, the first third of the movie takes place in the 60s, and then they go into the negative zone or nihilists, whatever they do. And then they come out in the modern day. So they're always a throwback to the 1960s, the same way that Captain America is a product of the 40s. I'd love if they did that. I think that'd be great. But I don't even have any interest in that, because right now I think Marvel is in a position where they have to win back the audience. They had the world has been so disappointed by Marvel movies. They haven't led anywhere. Shang-Chi, the 10 Rings, nothing. Zero. Erisham the Judge, zero. Blade, are we ever going to get that? Does anybody care about Agatha? The Darkhold Diaries? Who cares? I mean, I'm sorry. I don't know. I don't get it. I'm sad. I'm vexed. I'm terribly vexed. I'm more interested in Gladiator 2 than I am to see another Marvel movie. Thomas Logan says Eric Roth, who wrote Dune Part 1, Killers of the Flower Moon, wrote the script for Rendezvous with Rama. Alcon Entertainment is financing. Yeah, but is it getting made? Have we seen an actual green light on that film? I don't know. I know that Gosling is starring in, he's first starring in Project Hail Mary that starts shooting in June. He's in that. So I'd love to see Rendezvous with Rama get made, but that's another project that I've heard about for so many years that I'll believe it when I see it. Scott Bartholomew says, where's Tom Swift on the big screen? I don't know. Didn't they make some kind of a show recently about Tom Swift? Like an animated series? I don't know. Laserbeam Hawkins says, thank you, Rob. You and I park our shuttles in the same shuttle bay. Disney, Star Wars, and Marvel shows have done nothing but damage the IPs. Keep rocking, sir. Yeah, they have. Unbelievable. They needed more. They needed more Asbell. That's what they needed. I don't know. Look, I want these movies to be good. You know, I have all the 4K. And by the way, I hope that Disney, when they go back and they do their physical media, they redo the Marvel movies on disc. They can not pinch off their Atmos tracks because they want people to watch on their streaming service. Alas, poor York. Let's see. Should I read another letter? Let's see what I got. So I want to thank you. That was from Stuart Winstanley. Wrote that letter about the MCU. I give you the FBI. No, I think I'll leave it there, kids. I will end this stream. I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank Tom Jr. Jackson, my great moderator, for being here. I never tell him when I'm going to do a show, but he's here anyway. He's always there. And yeah. So there you go. What do you guys think? You want to send me a letter right there, postgeeksingularity.com. I'm trying to arrange some great interviews for the 1000th show. I've got feelers out, got interesting stuff percolating. I get ever closer. I'm getting stressed out because I have this audio drama to finish making, which, by the way, people have been asking. We're going to launch the Kickstarter for the audio drama in a couple weeks. I played the full-on proof of concept for the members during the member chat. I might put it up on the member chat tab so members can listen to it. I have to make the 5.1 mix. We have the 5.1 mix. I just haven't made a 5.1 file. The file that I played for everybody is a 2-channel stereo mix, which I'm still very proud of. And again, our plan is to premiere it at the San Diego Comic-Con. And hopefully maybe we'll be able to you'll see some White Devils action soon. And, I'm going to go see Dune. I'm very excited. I hope you guys love it as much as I did. It's truly an amazing experience and all that. And on that note, I'm going to end this show. Remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I say to everyone, have a great night. I'll be on the John Campea show tomorrow, and I'm going to be on the Critical Drinkers Open Bar on Thursday. So look out for that. Have a good night, everyone.